Hello and welcome to the FYP Podcast.
Hey.
Oh yeah, I just forgot about the score. Sponsored by Vector Printing. For all your print and embroidery needs, go to vector.co.uk. It's Vector there.
Okay.
And I've started this way too upbeat. And JCIS, the global research and brand consultancy from South London. Visit jc-is.com.
Do we have to?
Oh no,
I will.
You will, yeah.
I will.
Sorry, I was going with the morose guys.
Wow.
He really enjoyed it. When John was on last time, he really enjoyed saying I will, didn't he?
He did.
He didn't see the irony of it.
No. No, he didn't.
I will, you will, yeah.
Kevin Day,
Hello.
how are you? Do I even ask, actually?
I've still got a slightly angry hangover.
Right.
Which is partly my fault because I was working yesterday afternoon and should have gone home in between working but I was probably as frustrated in the hour after the game last night. As we'll discuss.
We will. Jesse Boyce,
Hello.
how are you? Why am I laughing? I don't know. It's been a while since you've been on.
It has been a little while.
Yeah, you look good.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
This is suddenly turned very flirtatious.
Hey,
You too, JD.
Jesse, it's so funny.
It's 2008. No, let's
I didn't say it was
let's
funny.
not go that
I
far.
didn't say it was funny.
Tell you what, I just noticed though, the picture on Kev's wall. Like, the first game I ever went to was against Birmingham in '88. That was on the front cover of the programme.
Was it that
Yeah.
picture, that print?
That is weird.
Wow.
Ali bought me that for me for a wedding present. My wedding present, I should say. But yeah, it's I think it's only 200 of them. Yes, I love that. It's beautiful. But we're trying to work out which game it was, but we've never been able to.
I've still got the programme. I'll send you a picture later.
Oh no, do you? I'd love to see that. Oh, that'd be really interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
This works great on radio. So nice one, guys.
Yeah.
Rob
Well, I'd
Sutherland.
like to point out that you are filming it, by the way. So
Oh,
all you
yes,
have to do
we
is
are, yeah.
you could just switch the thing around.
We'll do that. Yeah, we'll do that for all our 100 followers on YouTube. Rob Sutherland,
Hello.
how are you?
Yeah, good. Well, all things considered.
Why do I keep asking how everyone is? Because I know.
Because it's only a game. Because there's other things going in
Life
the world.
goes on.
You have to put things in.
We are going to get comments about that.
No, I'm pretty much quoting from what Ali said when I got home at midnight last night.
Really?
There's people starving in the world. I don't care.
So obviously Palace lost 3-2. In case anyone doesn't know, 3-2 to Man United on Monday night. We'd still never beaten United in the Premier League. When Palace went 2-0 up, Kevin, with that Van Aanholt goal in the second half, was there a bit of you that thought this could be it?
There was all of me that thought, because during the first half, we were talking about it, saying, well, this feels like the Arsenal game. This feels like the 3-0 Arsenal game. And then we deserved to be 2-0 up, I think, without a doubt. We certainly deserved to be ahead. And I thought, as I think every single person in my row, in my block, in the halfway stand, thought he'll bring either Sørloth or Benteke off and put a midfielder in, and we'll sit on this. And United don't look that up for it. And he just tried to score the third goal, and as soon as just another bit of catastrophic defending on the back post, and as soon as that goal went in, I just thought we're going to lose this.
Well, the first goal.
Yeah, as soon as that first goal for them went in, I thought we were going to lose it. And then there's so many things wrong. It's just the energy levels at the end were just. It's like somebody said last night. It's that teams seem to know that they can pick us off in the last 10 minutes. And with two in midfield, it's just they were out on their feet. It's just.
But earlier in the season, we were the team that was Jesse picking off people in the last 10 minutes, weren't we? We were the team that was buoyant in the last 10. So why are we now so drained?
I don't know, but it's been a bit odd watching this. When Royce first started to go a bit shy with his subs, it felt like it was the end of Jan, and he was making some sort of point to the board about not having enough to bring on. But he's sort of continued. Has anyone told him the window's closed? that point is now mute. But
I mean, the bench last night did not have a lot of not only quality but minutes. Or experience.
It's not so much quality. It's energy. It had Rakip on it. It had Riedewald on it. It had Lee on it. You could have put Sørloth out on the left and Schlupp in the middle. It was quite clear that Sørloth, and I don't agree with that. I didn't think Sørloth was that good, to be perfectly honest. And all those people that were raving about him, he looked one-dimensional. He looked one-footed.
Wow, I thought he looked really good.
But I thought it was really clear after an hour that he was gone. Mm-hmm. So even for that reason, take him. But as soon as we were 2-0 up, just take one of the strikers off. Take your pick. I thought Benteke had a decent game. Take Sørloth off, put a body in midfield. Even if you put Lee out on the left and Schlupp in the middle again, it's just like shore it up. We were getting the two of them were just getting hammered in there. It was so obvious what was happening. And Man United didn't have to do that, even to the extent that their third goal was a great goal.
Yeah,
but there's no one marking him, and no one had the energy to go and close him down.
Yeah.
The Rakitic signing's just looking stranger and stranger
It's odd,
because
isn't it?
he's got every time a game goes by, that's one less reason for getting him in. He's only got 9 games to play, and he's got.
Yeah.
And
He's on loan, isn't he? Of course. Yeah. We haven't even actually signed him.
But look, it's really interesting. As a friend showed me in the pub before, and like the Turkish media, all hyper excited that he's in the squad and saying at last they'll get to see how good he is. And you think, well, those are the all right. We don't know how good he is. We don't know what he's like, but bring him on just for the energies for the last. Do something. Make the substitutions just to shut the game down. We can't close a game down.
Yeah.
Just do cabs. Just pretend to be injured. Just no one goes down and.
It's like
breaks
it's like
the game up. Bring us someone just to waste a minute. Or it's.
What I was going to say, Rob, for a manager that's so experienced, it almost looks like an inexperience when it comes to game management. Weirdly,
I think there's an element of him potentially freezing, in that you end up getting so clouded by this idea that you just persist with what you're doing already, that you don't want to make a change, because what happens if you do make a change and then it leads to them scoring an equaliser and then it leads to them scoring a winner. So rather, like, the logic, I think, if you're looking at it from maybe a slightly psychological point of view, is that he may be that he's done this before, where you have this feeling of having to have faith in the people that perhaps have made mistakes in the past in order to give them some opportunity at redemption, and that just hasn't happened in the last 2 games. So now, ideally, after two defeats like this, 2 gutting late defeats, the hope is that he'll see that is a catalyst for change. In fairness, I think that if you're looking at the squad and you're looking at the team, the players that we had out on the pitch, the first 11, were arguably the only first 11 that he could pick. And then you end up going through, and you say it with, I completely agree with the Riedewald argument, but at the point where it was 2-2, the game was really still wide open, and Benteke nearly scored. There were a couple of other opportunities where Sørloth actually ran essentially clear on goal and then just shanked a shot wide. These are all opportunities where Palace could have taken advantage and could have scored, but for in Benteke's header's case, a magnificent save from De Gea. But so I think it's really. I completely understand why people are angry. I get it 100%. But if you look at it, if you're Roy Hodgson and you've got a first 11, and the first 11 that he's picked are literally the only ones that he genuinely trusts to do the job, and we already know
the
that.
First 11, but they've done that. If you turn that game on with a minute to go, and you saw it's 3-2, you think, Palace must have been 3-0 down. They went 2 up front and got a couple of goals back. We went 2 up front, which was a big a surprise to a lot of people. And it worked. I don't think it necessarily worked because we had those 2 up front, but we played really well in the first half. We played really well to start the second half. So what? There's no. I don't care who's on the bench. You don't carry on playing that way when you're 2-0 up against any team in the Premier League, let alone Man United. Because Man United were there for the taking. They didn't have to do anything to beat us. They just carried on doing what they were doing. If we just shored another man, and if and nobody would have said, "What are you doing, Hodgson? Stop! You need to score the 3rd goal." Everyone would have gone, "Yeah, of course, that's exactly the right thing to do. Take Sørloth off, put whoever it is, Riedewald, Rakitic, Lee, whoever. Put Delaney on as a 3rd centre back. Do something."
Yeah. I don't disagree, but then again, on the other side, on the flip side, you've got Man U bringing on Mata, Rashford, and you're talking about players of genuine quality.
Yeah, and because they had space to play in, because we only had 2 in the middle of the midfield.
Someone like Rakitic, who hasn't played a first team game in our division for X number, since he's signed, and hadn't played for months back in Sweden because their season had ended.
Well, no, it's Sørloth.
And you're asking him. Yeah. Well, that's true.
But he trusted Sørloth to go in. We don't know how good Rakitic is. Why did we buy him in the first place then?
Well, unless
this is Hodgson's way of saying, I want to do the transfers next season.
Perhaps.
But I don't want people playing silly buggers.
But you're asking Rakitic to come on against Mata, for example, and match up, and Pogba as well, and.
You're right, but even then,
I'm arguing the case.
You're asking him to be a 3rd defender in there with a 3rd midfield player in there, because it was quite clear that McCarthy and Milivojevic were getting the run around, and just get a 3rd body in there, even if it's Lee with his energy, just get somebody in there to get in the way.
I think you're right, but it just makes the Rakitic signing even more baffling, because you always know he's got 10, 12 games. That's it. That's his shelf life with us. So surely that guy needs experience immediately.
Yeah.
Put him on for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, because then he's on a night like last night. It's not virgin territory for him.
And apparently he's famous for his energy. He's a box-to-box player. His fitness levels are supposed to be famously high, and so that's exactly what we needed to come on, because there's something wrong energy-wise, and there's clearly something wrong, because we've gone from that's the one thing that Allardyce said when he took over from Pardew, that the players were 80 minutes fit and not 90. He seemed to have sorted that out, and now it seems to have gone backwards, because there's quite clearly an issue with physical fitness, with mental concentration.
Our expected subs rating's gone right down.
Thank God Andy's not here.
But even things like Tompkins, it's such. That's just a lapse of concentration that shouldn't happen in the Premier League defender.
And he was having a good game, I thought.
He was having a
great game. Yeah, and he's been one of our best players.
But that can also come from exhaustion on the like mental exhaustion, because he's played so many games for us now.
Well, he went off with cramp in the last game, and that's unforgivable for a Premier League footballer to go off with cramp.
Which, we did talk about last week. Just picking up a point Rob said about Roy sort of freezing. Is that what you say?
Yeah.
And I just had visions of him in Euro 2016. Do you remember we were losing to Arsenal and he was sort of looking forlorn on the touchline, not really sure what to do. And Jesse, like, Roy has been brilliant for us, absolutely brilliant. And he did win Manager of the Year at London Football Awards last week as well, which is an interesting award. But are we starting to see now the first cracks in Roy, the first mistakes that he's made since he's come in, really?
Well, I listened to the 5 Live podcast today, and he was asked directly the question by the interviewer, do you wish you put some subs on earlier? I was like, with bated breath, couldn't wait to hear the answer, so I just tried to remember for now. But he basically sidestepped it and immediately just went straight to Schlupp and said, well, Schlupp, I only thought he'd get 60 minutes, but he ended up playing 80 and he surprised me. And then sort of left that as the answer.
Right.
So he's clearly, this reminds me of the Loftus-Cheek thing, where he's a little bit bloody minded about it.
Yeah.
He's like, he won't be told. The more he's told, the less he'll do it.
Yeah.
It's like telling Wenger to buy a centre back.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. The more obvious it is.
Yeah.
So I do wonder, because it's happened 2 games in a row, and 2 games where we badly need to take whatever scraps we can get.
Yeah.
2 last-minute goals, both at home in a week. So it's double the frustration he hasn't learned from last week.
Yeah.
Also 2 back post headers as well, which was, and it was it's just that first goal. The second goal defending was just as bad.
Yeah. Well, okay. Speaking of the second goal, then we've had quite a few questions about Wayne Hennessey. I would like to pose a question to you, Kevin. That given Wayne's performance last night, is it time for Palace to send in the Cavalieri?
Nice.
He wrote that. So thanks, Jesse.
I thought I was just going to be an opera reference, Cavalieri Rusticana, but no, you went for fine. So
move on.
Yeah, good.
I don't know that reference.
I would refer you back to Jesse's comments about Hodgson being bloody minded. I'd be amazed if he doesn't pick Hennessey for the rest of the season, to be perfectly honest. And I'm quite pleased Andy Street's not here tonight, because last night basically summed up Hennessey's season. I mean, he made some good saves when he had to, but I mean, it's 2 complete howlers in the first half out of nothing. I mean, just nothing crosses that he just completely flapped out. That ball, Smalling's header, wasn't his fault, but the ball travelled a long way across him. His positioning wasn't brilliant for the third goal. Mm-hmm. Second goal, the second goal, none of the defenders covered themselves. I thought Van Arnold had a really good game last night, but he just looked like he wanted to lie down at that space, because he was just, it's the time and space that Lukaku, I know there was some claims afterwards that there was a handball in there, but the time and space he had.
And he also sent us a photo in the WhatsApp group with Smalling doing a header against the post, I think.
With
and
Hennessey,
10
players.
10 players between Hennessey and the goal line,
It did sort of sum up his season, but he made a couple of good saves when he had to, but no one comes away talking about. Again, the Tottenham game, that was he played really, really well against Tottenham, but then you just talk about the one mistake, which wasn't completely his, but if he doesn't trust Rakip to come in and play Premier League football, I don't see how he can trust Cavalieri to come in. I don't know who has the time to do these things, but somebody posted a video of Cavalieri in his last 5 games in Brazil, and he basically was a Brazilian Wayne Hennessey. Essentially, it's like. He did it with a certain samba style, but also when the club are reporting that he's impressed in training, but he's there as a backup keeper. He's not there to take Hennessey's place. And I don't think Hodgson will send that sort of message. But again, the frustration is, but it's the back foot again. Van Arnold played really well, but one mistake. Tompkins played really well, one mistake.
Yeah,
I think I was saying to we've got a little 5-year plan chat group as well, and I was saying as well that.
Have we? Is this like the pod extra? Is this what else is it?
Rob, just keep talking.
And I was saying on there
on the
that
WhatsApp, is this?
To me, the second goal.
Good, just keep going. Yeah,
The second goal.
You've been talking on it today.
I'll explain
sorry.
later. It's pod politics.
The second goal.
Broken that to being slightly easier. You're drinking my wine. You're in my house.
It's nice. I like it. It's good.
You're in a WhatsApp group that I'm not in.
You're in a few. You're in.
So basically, the second goal struck me as one of a team that hadn't been quite convinced that they're actually in a relegation battle. And by that I mean when Lukaku spends about 10 seconds shaping up to shoot, there's only one player that ends up actually trying to dive in front of him, and that was Van Aanholt.
Yeah.
And you end up thinking like you've got a goalkeeper behind them all, spread with his arms spread wide, which he's not preparing he's not shaping to save.
No.
And then you've got defenders who are just stood there, and when the goal goes in, the body language speaks volumes as well. Prior to that, in the moment where the ball hits the post, Wayne reacts in a way that suggests that it's already gone in. Like it's almost like the and I'm not saying it's. I've argued this as well. There are between Wayne and I think Benteke had a bit of criticism because right at the end he should have chased that ball out.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He gave up, and it infuriated a lot of people. And then Man U went up the other end and scored. Between those two players, there are 9 other individuals who failed to do the job that they needed to do.
Well,
Wayne Hennessey is the final line of defence, and without question, he is someone who you cannot rely on. But if you can't rely on him, then you have to put some emphasis on the other players in front of him taking responsibility.
Well, the defending on the second goal was so odd that all of us around us thought the whistle had gone.
So
that's what it looked like.
It looked like the game had stopped and our defenders had stopped.
Lukaku handballed it. I mean, if you actually watch the video footage again, he kills the ball dead.
But you can
none of us saw that.
You can see why it wasn't given, can't you?
Yeah, none of us saw that. But and when I did see it, I was like, you'd be furious if it was disallowed.
Although you saw the replay, there were fans behind the goal shouting at it. But I can see why it wasn't spotted.
We thought the game had stopped because
the other major issue that we have while we've got so many defenders out, while we've got Scott Dan out, and while we've got Sacco out, is that neither Kelly or Tompkins are actually defensive leaders. And what I mean by that is people who are like the organisers. Scott Dan was someone who spent a long time directing other players about where their position should be. You had the same with Sacco. Sacco is a leader. He's the kind of person that will lead not just by example, but by instructing others. But if you watch the way that Tompkins and Kelly interact, they very often just leave it to the other guy. Like there's an element of that. Like unless the ball is really high, like in a place where Tompkins can head it and he heads it out, he does a great job. But if you've got the two of them together, neither of them seem to be able to communicate with each other in a way that actually needs to be done in a centre-back pairing.
You know, until yesterday, I would have disagreed with you on that because I've said on the pod before that I think Tompkins looks a better player when he's the boss centre back, if you like, when he's the more experienced centre back, and when him and Kelly have been together, I think. But last night, that was noticeable that there was no. And I thought what was interesting in the Tottenham game was that Fosu-Mensah was talking to Wan-Bissaka all the time, and considering Fosu-Mensah is only 3 years older than him at most, but he was talking to him all the time, and that was noticeably absent last night. Not the Wan-Bissaka. And to be fair, with hindsight and with a day of not drinking, you'd reevaluate. And there are a lot of positives, and we did play really well. And one of the positives is Wan-Bissaka, who looks, it just looks at home at that level, and you just wonder why he's not been. But then again, it comes back to exactly what Jesse says: is why we haven't trusted young players in the past. We put one in, and he looks at home in the Premier League. Yeah. So where's Rakip then? Where's Lakilo? Where's the other players?
He's been put in out of necessity, not out of choice.
Well, we've got 12 players injured.
That's my point. Yeah, he's playing because we've got no other option.
But it turns out to be. So why is Rakip? And we haven't got any other option in midfield. Yeah, when we got Surlop is clearly not fit to get in the last 20 minutes. Schlupp's not fit. Yeah. Where's Rakip then? I mean, where's Lakilo?
It is weird that he does seem to put trust in a 17-year-old and not players that have been signed in January.
It was wishful thinking on my part that Cavallari was going to go straight in just because he'd been training for a month. I thought it's just the paperwork. That's all he's doing. He's going, knowing that he'd played for Liverpool. It's not alien to him, right? Yeah. So he knows the country. He hasn't played a lot.
He knows Roy.
I was like, he's going to go in, surely. Especially after all the pressure that Wayne's had on himself. But then Wan-Bissaka, I thought it was a huge compliment. That I came back for the second half, saw the sub, and that sub was hard for me to process. I was like, Rashford for McTominay, what's going on there? Yeah. And I'd decipher, and then he'd put Sanchez a bit more in the middle, hadn't he? Because I think first half towards the homestay where I sit, Sanchez wasn't getting a lot of joy against him. And there was one moment where I remember, did you see Sanchez looking behind him at Ashley Young come forward just to say, I need some help here, or at least give me an option? Yeah. So I thought, that's a bit... Ashley Young's clearly getting a lot of jip from the fans. His head was down a little bit, which I think affected him for us in a good way. So I thought, what's he done there? He's brought Rashford in because Sanchez can't get a hold of Bissaka. I thought that was a real compliment. Yeah. And also they're a goal down. And it was that point where you just looked at Pogba, Sanchez, Rashford, Lukaku. They really had to give it some to overpower us. And I think Bissaka,
and even then they didn't down his side.
No,
it didn't come from his side at all.
That's the frustrating thing. Is the first time. I mean, I think there was 3 times in a row in about 5 minutes where Pogba overhit through balls. There was a couple of times when Sanchez missed control. They looked rattled. They looked like they hadn't expected Palace to play that way. They looked like the 4-4-2 had thrown them slightly. Albeit, I don't think Sherlock calls Smalling that many problems, but Wan-Bissaka was great because his energy, his pace, and he's also that confident. Is he only 17?
I think he's 17.
Really?
That's astonishing.
So. Yeah,
I mean that's.
And some of the blocks he made a couple of blocks on.
Well, that clearance in the early in the second half.
Yeah,
when it was like Fossey Mensah did in one of his first games, where he sort of raced back 25 yards, and then stopped it going out of play and turned it into a throw. It's fantastic.
He looks like an absolute natural already, and it's his second game, and it's against Spurs and Man United.
I was thinking about the Spurs game when he got to the byline and he sliced that cross into the homestyle. I was thinking that's what we'll give him that. Of course, we expect that. I've been watching Blassie do that for 3 years, and Wilf did that for 5 years. I'll give him at least one of those. There wasn't any of that last night.
No,
he didn't waste a thing.
Well,
Wan-Bissaka's 20.
Is he?
Oh, he's 20.
Right.
He looks young.
Because there's a couple of around us saying last night, it's like I wonder if he's an option further forward because he's got the pace.
He played in a more attacking role when he was a youth player.
Yeah.
So I don't think he'll be starting every game. I presume now, wouldn't he?
I mean,
you'd like to think
it would be very harsh to drop him, wouldn't it?
Yeah. 2 of the hardest fixtures of the season. He's just come out glowing.
Yeah.
I think with United. They're one of those teams that they've got so much quality though. Like when they were 2-0 down, you knew that if they scored that one goal, they would all just snap into gear. And from that moment on, Sanchez suddenly looked like a player who knew where his position was. Pogba seemed to just be able to. There were times when he was being challenged by 3 of our players, and he'd come out of it with the ball, and you'd wonder how he did it. They have that quality. I mean, that's the frustrating thing.
Exactly.
We should never have gone. We should really have just put all the emphasis on not conceding that first.
Everyone
goal.
knows that. Everyone knows what. I mean, they're not the sort of team who come at you away from home. They're not. They'll sit back and see what you've got.
Yeah.
But everyone knows the quality they have. But we were beating them 2-0, and we deserved to beat them 2-0. And they didn't really look to know what to do, and then we didn't change anything. As simple as that. We handed it to them on a plate. And part of the reason that Pogba managed to step up so much in the midfield was that our 2 central midfield players were clearly flagging.
Yeah.
It's quite clearly flagging. If we can see that, then they can see that. Luca got booked, I think, it wasn't a lazy attack. It was just he was tired. McArthur, I thought, was superb in the first half. But you could see he was flagging in he wasn't getting to balls that he was getting to in the first half, and United's midfield knew that.
In the first 10 minutes, I thought Kabay was wearing McArthur's shirt because he was opening his body up to receive the ball, like Kabay. Like he'd basically been told by Roy,
the Scottish Kabay.
Yeah, you're Kabay tonight. He was literally just taking it off the fullbacks and just receiving it deep. And
all that was a good sign because if we, and somebody trying to cheer me up last night said if we play like that against the teams that we've got left, we will get the points that we need.
But that annoys me though because I've been hearing that all season.
I know.
Play like that for the rest of the season, you'd be okay. I'm like. But we are playing like that,
I know,
and we're still not winning.
Remember when John Curran, JCIS, I will, was on, and I said I couldn't see us not getting a couple of points from Chelsea, Man U, Liverpool, Spurs, and John went, we'll get no points. And we go, no, we will. We'll definitely get at home. And it's like, and now I probably agree with him. But
he's very negative for a man whose catchphrase is "I will."
But the annoying thing is that we should have got 4 points.
Yeah, we should have done.
We were 10 minutes away from getting 4 points. And Tottenham did batter us in the second half, but we were not controlling the game, but we were organised and defensively cohesive, and then one stupid error from a player that had only just come on because the player had gone off with cramp, and then last night. So we should have had 4 points. We should be 12th now.
That's the frustrating thing, is that we're not getting... It's not like Sunderland last season when we're getting hammered and we're sliding down the table. We can all see what this team can do. We can see the quality. It's so... If we can almost sort of reach out and touch it. It's so close, and yet we're still not picking up these points.
Yeah, and again, the psychological thing last night would have put that thing to bed with we can't win without Wilf. If we beat Man United without Wilf, that would have been fantastic. Even if we come away with a point against Man United, that would have been fantastic. We've only got 4 points, 3 points off them in the Premiership ever. Yeah. Even that would have been a good result. But it's just the fact that and they're not just... It's not people slipping. It's not Steven Gerrard slipping on a wet bit of pitch. It's a player standing 5 yards behind the rest of the back four. It's the whole of the back four watching Lukaku doing what we all know he can do. It's the defenders being too tired to close someone down. It's not,
It's basic stuff.
Yeah, and
it's almost
Sunday
out of
exhaustion and about
Even my Sunday League team can do that.
Yeah,
and I'd
like to think so. Yeah.
You go on.
No, you go.
Oh, you're very kind. Just finally then.
It's not the same, is it? That Andy Street here is not the same, is it, really, after you?
No, it's much better.
Jesse has such beautiful eyes.
Just finally then, on part one.
What is your problem, Rob? Two men are able to just...
He's just jealous. Welcome back to the 5-Year Plan Podcast.
Hey!
Pod 248. Oh,
wow,
very close to 250 around the corner.
Have you arranged anything like you've been promising since pod 239?
No. Sponsored by Vector. I really need to do things. Vector Printing for your printing embroidery needs. Go to vector.co.uk. It's Vector with
Okay.
And JCIS, Global Research and Brand Consultancy from South London. Visit jc-is.com.
I will.
Very nice.
No one does it like Endicott, though, do they?
No, I thought you were going to say like JCIS, but... Endicott does have a certain sort of gravitas, doesn't he?
He does.
Before we start with part two and the questions, there was some sad news that came out of the game yesterday that a Palace fan sadly passed away before the game. Rob, wasn't there?
Apparently so. There were a number of witnesses. I believe Jesse actually walked past it at the time, but unfortunately a Palace fan was... It appears from reports online that Palace fan has died.
Yeah.
He, by all accounts, he was a dedicated Palace fan for over a 70-year period.
Wow.
Attended the Burnley fixtures. He's seen all of the ups and downs, basically.
Yeah.
He according to a member on the BBS who claims to be his family member, he even attended the 1966 World Cup final.
Wow.
So he's had a good run of excitement and disappointment, probably.
Yeah, and it does, Kevin, in a way. I guess I know we spent half an hour moaning about the result last night. It does sort of put it into perspective a bit.
It does put it into perspective, of course it does, without being trite. And it's, I'm sure had he seen the game, he'd have been moaning just as much as we are now. But we use the phrase Palace family quite a lot, and one of the things I always reconcile myself with is that it doesn't really matter what division we're in, because we're lucky enough to be Palace fans, and that kind of trumps everything else, basically. But I'd like to point out as well that being at the Burnley game in 1979 is not necessarily a sign of great age. Quite a few of us were at the Burnley game in 1979. I wasn't at the World Cup final in 1966, but I was at the... Ken Clark, the Tory MP, claims that he was at the World Cup final in 1966 and that he shouted at the linesman in Russian that the ball was over the line.
Right.
And when it was pointed out to him...
That's some claim.
Well, he's pointed out to him afterwards the linesman didn't speak Russian. He was from Azerbaijan. He said, well, no, it's similar language, so it's not...
But anyway, obviously our thoughts do go out to this Palace fans' family and friends. And
yeah, and while we're talking non-football matters, if you don't... Well, it is a football matter, but you may have noticed that the Palace for Life, the foundation, in conjunction with the club, launched a campaign this week to try and deal with the increasing problem of obesity in youngsters in Croydon, which is I was about to say a growing issue. That would have been an unintended pun. But you may have seen the slightly awkward video with Wayne Hennessey and Patrick Van Arnold.
I'm just amazed he didn't drop the smoothie maker.
Well, you'd be amazed how many people said that when he watched it. But also, there's a bit in it where he picks up Patrick Van Arnold's hair product and the smile doesn't go to Van Arnold's eyes. It's kind of, and Chris Grierson's. It's fun. It's worth watching, but it's basically what they've asked youngsters, Palace fans in particular, to do is come up with ideas for Palace smoothies.
Okay.
And there's going to be by the end there's going to be a competition, and like Palace movies with proper ingredients, but also named after Palace players. So. Yeah, so
there's one place Wayne doesn't like it. It's in the mix of those.
Basically, they've asked us to get behind it, and because what basically they said at the meeting today was that sure, 5-year plan listeners can beat kids when it comes to
they clearly have never listened to this podcast.
When it comes to smoothie ideas. So what we want in the next week or so is your smoothie ideas.
Nice,
serious or not. But
I guess
also
the Van Aanholt one would have a bit of sort of frosting on the top.
Yeah. The Benteke one would have a couple of ingredients missing, I'm guessing as well. But so we want your Palace smoothies basically.
Yeah, would the Brolin one just be?
It'd just be
terrible.
ice cream.
Yeah, just like super chocolate.
Ice cream
and a bit of blood.
That's not the point, Thomas.
So it's a serious. I mean, it's a serious issue, but obviously, the more you can inject humour into it, the better it is for young people to help them.
So we want people to tweet us in with their
so we want to tweet and
suggestions or Facebook or something.
Yeah, and then what they want us to do, which I don't think we will do, is I don't think it's clever, is for us to pretend to be a primary school age kid and then put it in. So we won't do that.
I mean, we'll just get Endicott back on the pod.
Yeah, because otherwise it's going to end up like Only Fools and Horses, and you'll have to pretend that you're a 14-year-old.
Okay, this pod has taken a weird turn.
It's a famous episode of Only Fools and Horses.
The Groovy Gang.
Yeah, the Groovy Gang, exactly. Yeah. Where Del Boy enters Rodney into a competition for 14 to 16-year-olds. The Groovy, that's good knowledge.
So anyway, good knowledge.
I like it when you're on, Jesse. That's right, mate. Cultural references just fly over.
Happening again. Jesse is enjoying this.
Yeah, you're turning me now, Jesse. It's well.
So yeah, if you tweet in your suggestions at FYP Fanzine or email. What is our email? contact@fypfanzine.uk. Is that our email? I think that's our email.
Yeah. We've got an email now as well.
Yeah.
As well as a group chat that I'm not on. I'm not on the email list.
No. I don't think anyone is. I'm not sure anyone gets those emails.
We've never mentioned an email address in 249.
I thought today I realised I never read out the email. And people might want to email in. People might not be in social media.
There might be questions from Pod 199 and some poor sod at home is waiting for his question to be written out.
I think I get those emails.
What do you think about Andy Johnson? What?
I'm not.
How's he going to read that question out?
Should we crack on with some questions?
Yes.
From our listeners. Idaho Green.
Hello, Idaho.
Great name. Says, at some point in the pod, can you all just let out a frustrated scream for like 3 to 5 seconds? I think it would be cathartic for everyone.
I'm all screamed out, Idaho. It's a good idea, isn't it?
It's a very good idea. It's a good idea.
It does work. No, it's just people will be listening. People will be on the tube with their headphones in. It's probably
yeah. Maybe we could pause for 3 seconds for people at home just to do their own scream.
That's it.
Cool. Well, I hope that worked. I hope that worked. So we've had a few questions on Aaron Wan-Bissaka, as you can imagine, last night. James Stevens 03.
Hi, James.
Says, do we need more young players to boost our chances of staying up? This clearly worked with Bissaka.
Well, do you know what's really interesting, Jesse? We talked about in the Tottenham game, I assumed that half the questions would be about Wan-Bissaka and no one mentioned him. It's barely, and I was really quite surprised by, but it's almost like last night was the first time they noticed, or maybe they thought the Tottenham game was a one-off, he wouldn't play again, and then he couldn't play as well again. But it comes back to what Jesse said. It does make you wonder what else we've got out there. Yeah, it does make you wonder, because the one thing we know about De Boer is that he really rated Lokilo. He thought Lokilo was the only outstanding talent in the academy. We know we've let players go that we had heard rumours about that were good. But Wan-Bissaka's not a name that we've been conjuring with for the last 2 years, saying when are we going to get to see it. We knew about him, but no one was saying when are we going to see him.
No one's expecting him to sort of break in.
I don't think anyone expected him to break in at right back, but he's just looks...
We have had Nia Kirby, who's, I know, a very sort of highly rated youngster, been on the bench. There is also a young lad who's scoring a lot of goals for a reserve team. His name is James Daly. Yeah. So in a way, it feels like I have fulfilled a dream there to play for Palace.
He's an old-fashioned centre forward as well, apparently.
He's spelt the same way as well. Spelled exactly the same way. So
there aren't that many different ways to spell James Daly, is there?
You could spell it with an E, as in the Daily, not James.
As in Arthur.
Yeah, or an I.
He won't get that reference.
I will.
But you're not James. You're not James.
In Minder.
But you're not James. You're Jim.
Well, James or Jim.
He tells everyone he's Jim.
James or Jim. Whatever.
There's something beautiful about watching a youngster come in who's not set in his ways in terms of cautious Premier League. He's just he wanders And there was one point where he was in the middle of the pitch for no reason at all, and Townsend had filled in at right back.
Yeah.
And then against Spurs, when he realised, actually, this is all right, I'm enjoying this. There was just that moment on the halfway line where he was telling players to get forward. It was just brilliant, just to see that fearless kind of just instinct just to set in.
I think Warnock's probably the only manager we had that he didn't necessarily play a lot of Palace kids, but he had an instinct for certainly other clubs for youngsters. And he always made the point that the fans will never ever go at you, one of your own youngsters.
No. Yeah.
And it is a joy to watch. It does add to your pleasure by 10%. It's like when Wilf comes through.
Absolutely.
Unless that player's Sean Hankin, in which case you get ripped to shreds for misplacing a pass.
Yeah.
But that was years ago.
Still that, even when you watch Chelsea, you want Victor to do well. You want ex-Palace players to do well. And when you see because I feel a bit of a fraud sometimes when people say, Palace Academy, you have two things everyone knows about Palace, the fans and the academy. You go, well, the fans, the academy.
But there are some players that come into a first team and they do look a bit sort of nervous and stuff, and then sometimes you get a player, and it happened with Klein when he came in, happened with Wilf, or even not with Wilf necessarily at the start, but where they look like they've been playing for years, and that's what Bissaka's like. He just looks like an experienced pro. I
think Klein's the best example, or the best... best comparison, really. Yeah. And he, like you say, he looks like he belongs there, and he also looks like he's having fun, which is
so far up the pitch. Second half, even he's just really helping out.
He's got so much pace that he can afford to do that.
Yeah,
he kept up with all of. There was the excellent tackle towards the end of the second half.
He's physical as well. He's
really
good.
Times it perfectly. Times it perfectly. It's one of those things. The thing is, when you're a young player, it's all about the first few, that first game, first two games that can change the entire dynamic of someone's career.
Absolutely.
Because you can go from being that hero, that kind of, the one that everyone's surprised by, the one that people suddenly cheer. I think one of the reasons why Wilf was so successful for us, or has been in part, is because I think he scored on his debut against Sheffield Wednesday. Yeah. And if you can have that kind of an impact, suddenly everyone gets excited about seeing you play, and they want you to succeed, and there's not that nervousness, there's not that hum of what's he going to do next, is he going to make a mistake? It's all about, look at this guy, he knows what he's doing.
I think it was Coventry, actually.
Was it Coventry?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
We sent Wednesday down.
It was Clinton Morrison that scored
But also debut. The thing with Bissaka as well is he's got so much pace and so much energy. You think, he could probably play as a wing back as well.
Yeah.
And the thing is as well, energy is one of those words. Gary Neville, every second word he uses is, every second word is Aaron Ramsey. Even in games where he's not watching Arsenal, he's still moaning about Aaron Ramsey. Look at him, he's walking. What? It's shocking. No, he's not from Yorkshire. That's Fred Truman there talking about him. But because what you'd like to see, at this level, is you want to see a back four that's got Fossey Mensah in it, that's got Wan-Bissaka in it, that's got 20-year-olds rather than 30-year-olds.
Yeah,
basically.
Absolutely.
That lack of experience is made up for by energy and enthusiasm, and they will learn. And of course, you want, ideally, you'd have someone like Mamadou Sakho in there or Van Arnold in there, but you need that level. And that's the sort you want to see in midfield as well, because Milivojevic is a given. He's got to be there. He's got to play, but he needs 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds around him.
I like Gyro,
and it comes back to Riedewald, it comes back to Rakip, it comes back time and time again to the same question.
It makes you wonder how close or how much he was on De Boer's radar, because he didn't like Wardy. He played him out of some sort of desperate last move, and he was willing to play Riedewald at 9. Was he 19?
19,
willing to start him in the first game.
He played Townsend at right wing back.
And if he had Lakilo and Lameka on his radar, willing to give them.
Well, he did take Bissaka to the Premier League trophy, whatever it's the thing in Asia. In the summer.
Did he?
He was part of the squad and did play it a bit there. So, but maybe not as much as he is now. Can I?
It was De Boer who bought Riedewald and Sanchez for Ajax, wasn't it initially?
Yeah, I think it was.
When they were very young.
Mr. Cadbury's parrot.
Hi, Mr. Cadbury's parrot.
Hello.
Sounds like
Does he lay cream eggs?
I've never seen James Daly raise one eyebrow before.
I've never seen James Daly now.
I thought that's what are you in the adverts on the tube? What name do you go by under there?
Just
Miracle Man.
Just James.
Miracle Hair Man. Shane Warne. Yeah, we'll call you
a legend. Mr. Cadbury's parrot says, assuming we go down, it's not a great start.
Not assuming anything.
Would you swap an immediate return with the current squad? Won't happen because they'll all go. For 2 years in the Championship, but 5 academy players in the first team: Wan-Bissaka, Kirby, Daly, Baptiste, and Dreher.
It's a complicated essay of a question.
No. Sorry.
I'm not assuming we'll go down for a start off.
Okay.
Anyway, next question.
Yeah.
I think he's saying, would you scrap it all again and start with a young team?
I think whatever happens this season, and I think we will stay up. Whatever happens, there needs to be a shake-up of the squad. We've talked about it week in, week out, and you'd like to see more energy, more youth in there. But I think we've got a couple of younger players. We need more.
We've got so many players out of contract this summer, but I think we will see a high turnover.
Well, we need to, whatever the reason, whether it's inefficient contracting or just common sense, we need to shake the squad up. We know the 5 or 6 players that are automatic first team choices. Mm-hmm. We have to get a few more that are automatic first team choices, and we have to make the squad stronger. But to be fair, we've been saying that since January 2014.
It just doesn't. It just doesn't work that way anymore either.
It doesn't,
because you look at the season we came up, we bought 12 players or something like that. Yeah. Just simply because we knew that I think Scannell had left by then, but the Scannells of that kind of generation just weren't given a chance to step up.
Well, because most managers, Pulis was very open and honest about it. He said, I won't play kids in the relegation battle in the Premier League, full stop. And you'd expect, I think there's a lot of Premier League teams, you'd only see the kids in the last 2 games of the season when you're already...
But then you have teams like Southampton who do continue... I know they're struggling this season, but for the last 5 years, they have brought kids through, straight into the first team, and they've done all right.
Well, it's funny, there is an argument as well that in the past we had to have the academy for economic reasons.
Yeah.
That we sold one player every 3 years for £5 million and that kept us going. But that's no longer an issue. So because there's so much money coming in from elsewhere, it's not a source of financial income anymore. So I think they'd take less interest.
One of the things that was interesting, I know that we've had discussions about Dougie Freedman in the past about what his role is, but one of the things that is interesting about Dougie Freedman is the idea that one of his roles is to ensure that players in the youth team who they believe have a pathway to the first team, that we don't end up clogging up the squad with players that could block their pathways. So, for example, you have at right back, you have Ward as a first choice, you have Kelly as the backup if you need him to play right back, and then you have Wan-Bissaka. So the ultimate reason that Wan-Bissaka is playing now is because he doesn't have Kelly in the way, because Kelly's playing centre back. You could argue then, from that perspective, that the reason why Rakip isn't playing is because you've got MacArthur in that centre role, and then if you're going to bring off MacArthur, you're going to bring on Riedewald, and Rakip is the third element in that. You're not going to take out you're not going to sub your captain off. You wouldn't expect to. So it's one of those that I'm just looking at it from the perspective of if that's how they're looking at doing it. The same with Jak, for example, the Polish centre back, that he's like third or fourth choice in line, and ultimately at some point he'll probably get that opportunity. But it's one of those things where they've obviously got a system in. To me, that perhaps they've got a system in place that ensures that it's a progressive thing.
I hope.
And in Rakip's case, there's talk that Palace have got some kind of an agreement with Benfica that at the end of this loan spell they could sign him. Now, if he plays,
well, you'd like to think.
That's assuming. I
think you're assuming too much intelligence and strategy on behalf of the club, to be perfectly honest, because the simple way of looking at it is that we bought 3 players in the January window, and 2 of them the manager clearly doesn't want to play. We've got centre-back problems, and Yak's not even in the squad. Yeah, we've got midfield problems, and Rakip's not even getting on. Surlot, I don't.
But there's an element
he crowbarred Surlot into the team at left wing because he had no choice. But I don't think he would have picked him. So that. Somewhere along the line, you don't get the feeling that Dougie Freedman sat down with Roy Hodgson and said, "We got these players for the future." We've bought 3 players, and 2 of them aren't getting the look in, and something clearly is wrong there.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but equally, there's a necessity with Surlot playing because Benteke is the only other striking option that we've got. Whereas the necessity isn't there with our midfield because we actually have midfielders that can play, and up until Kelly ended up getting injured, Jak wouldn't have been a necessity either. So I think
we've only got 3 midfield players.
No,
we've only got that at the moment.
I think a lot of this is about
You compare it to last year with 4 players that came straight into the first team.
Right, but
Allardyce brought those players in. You get the feeling that Hodgson didn't bring these players in, and Hodgson clearly
we
doesn't
didn't
want
have
them.
a director of football then.
Well, but no, we didn't need one. Allardyce didn't want a director of football, but Allardyce identified 4 players, and he got 4 players in, and they started in the first team.
Right,
and arguably they helped to keep us up.
You're comparing, but Allardyce wouldn't have had the option to sign the 4 players that he signed this year. Because we've got 11 players out injured, all of whom we're paying wages for. You've got to fit all of those players into a wage structure. It's not like we suddenly stop paying them wages because they're not playing.
But we haven't replaced the players that are injured.
But that's the problem, because we genuinely can't afford to actually do that. That's one of the issues that we're facing. So then you end up, you could still, to me, I think the importance is, if you're going to argue that Palace aren't being progressive enough in terms of looking at things long term, which Rakip could be, because if there is, in case there is a long-term option for him, and Yak could be, because ideally it would be great to have more than 1 or 2 backup centre-backs. You've got to look at it from, you can't argue that we don't have a progressive plan and then bemoan the fact that we sign players with that progressive plan.
I'd love to have a progressive plan, were it not for the fact that we were 3rd bottom of the Premier League.
Of course, but we're hamstrung by having 11 players out injured. We're hamstrung by having a centre like Scott Dan.
That argument makes no logic. We've got 11 players out injured, and 2 of the players we bought aren't replacing the players that are out injured.
Yeah, but that's
so what's the point of buying players for the future when we've got 11 players out injured?
Scott Dan is, I think, one of our highest paid players.
What I'm saying is that you're talking about. We're a Premier League club. We can afford to play. We'll lose a lot more money by being relegated than we'll lose by paying wages.
Because of our wage structure, it sounds like we can't afford
There's an element of that because you've got Scott Dan.
We've changed the wage structure in the past.
Scott Dan is on a huge amount of money. Saka's on a huge amount of money. You're talking about our 2 best centre backs.
So that's the real question.
If we get relegated, that's a ludicrous argument because the wage structure.
The real question is how are we in this situation? How are we in the position?
Let's have a Dougie Freedman pod then, because that's about time we started asking questions of him.
We've had a lot of Dougie Freedman pods.
But it's like the real question is we bought 3 players in, and only one of them's in the first. Has got a look in, and he doesn't. To be, he looks like a potentially good player, but he's not going to keep us up. Sherlock's not going to keep us up. We bought 4 players last year that kept us up. We've bought 3 players this year that aren't going to do that. So
the point is, you've got to find the balance. It's not.
No,
I don't underestimate.
We're not doing it.
I don't underestimate the challenge it is, right? But we've been 5 years in the Premier League, so that's probably 9 to 10 transfer windows. We've had 2 good ones.
But that's also cyclical, because every single time we've had a January transfer window, we've had a manager come in with ideas about about the players they want. You had Pardew come in, we signed his players. You had Pulis come in, we signed his players. You had Allardyce come in, we signed his players. So none of that. There's no long-term, long-tail kind of view of how things are going to work. And I'm not saying that we should just accept that the status quo as it is, but I think that you have to look. There's a bigger picture as well.
I don't underestimate how hard it is.
Let's say
the academy's a bigger picture.
Let's say you've got a £50 million wage budget, right? £50 million wage budget, and you divide that wage budget by 25 players. You take out 11 of those players, you're still paying. You're still paying that massive chunk, and so you've got to find unless you say to those players, do you mind not taking as much of a wage for the time that you're out injured?
Well, Jack won't
which
be
no one's going to do.
Yeah, but the new players coming in, Rakip's not going to be on any decent wages. Jack's not going to be on any decent wages.
Maybe
that's why we signed him. You don't buy prospects in January. You don't.
Of course, but maybe the intention wasn't to do that.
Unless you strengthen the team.
We create our own wage structure. It's not the Premier League that tells us what gives us a finite amount of money. It's our own wage structure. We want to break it. We break it.
There's a few.
Well, clearly we don't.
But you can't because of the financial, because of the regulations that you have.
What regulations?
Long-term cost controls.
Steve Parish keeps talking about is why we seem to be the only club that abides by it. Why do we see people like Brighton and Huddersfield bringing players in from decent players?
You're talking about Brighton who've just come up with a championship squad. You're comparing.
Have you seen where we are in the league table?
But have you seen the players we've got?
They'll be paying less on wages when they do their squad.
The wages is a false argument. We decided
the wages are part of your financial regulation. How much you're allowed to pay.
We've bought players that aren't going to help us stay up.
It's the balance, right? I mean, you're not find a bigger Zaha fan than me, right? But consider this: how many years did he have on his contract before he signed the new one?
Right.
How many did he have on his
Don't know.
contract?
Of course.
Don't know.
4?
Cool.
Yeah.
Right? So why would we give him a new contract to the point where we can't afford a player for when he gets injured?
Yeah.
Because him out of the team means that Sirlot is on the left wing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
To stop him leaving? To
Yes,
stop him
but
playing?
he's got 4 years on his contract. He doesn't need a fifth,
But it was a big pay
doesn't
rise.
need- yeah, exactly. Which means we can't afford a player that can possibly step in his shoes.
The Zaha thing is interesting
And
as
now
well, though, because
we can't beat a team without him.
what Will
There's no balance.
Wilf signing that contract has almost hamstrung him as well, though, because how many other clubs that he's going to aim to go toward, like that he would ideally like to sign for, would accept to pay the kind of wages that we do?
Okay, well, that's a debate
All
for...
of them,
But I
all of
mean-
them except Tottenham.
That's a debate for another pod.
Every single club in the Premier League will pay Wilf more money than we pay him, except Tottenham.
Let's move on. I do have a question about Wilf, actually, although it's not related to his contract or anything. It's from Peter Windsor.
Hi, Peter.
He says, where does Wilf fit into the team when that started last night? Who was dropped? Schlupp,
Centre-back.
Sirlot, Benteke. Centre-back.
Goalkeeper, centre-back.
Townsend. I mean, I think the answer to that
Anywhere
question
he
is
wants, basically.
wherever he wants. Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Well, we wouldn't play Sirlot and Benteke up front, would we? We'd
No,
play,
you'd have Wilf and Nandros as the...
yeah.
Yeah.
He'd go back to exactly the system that
That we're-
Benteke
that
didn't
we're
score
more-
any goals in. Yeah.
Well, though we did play that earlier in the season,
Yeah.
and Benteke wasn't scoring goals in that
Yeah.
system, so
No, I'm not going to go at Benteke because I thought he played well last night.
he did. Okay, so next question is from
Good question, Peter. by the way.
J. Thanks, Peter. J.1W.
Hi, Jay.
AJ.
Hello.
Says, is it a coincidence that we concede 10 times more screamers than any other team in the Premier League? We do let in a lot of decent goals, don't we?
Yeah.
I think every season we've had a goal of the season contender.
Yeah, that's
At
true.
least one, yeah.
At least one for the last, yeah.
Yeah.
That's Selhurst.
Well, Dele Alli's one.
Dele Alli.
That was handball. That shouldn't have stood. So we know.
Giroud
Carroll.
Scorpion.
Andy
Andy
Defoe
Carroll's
last year.
bicycle.
Defoe
Defoe,
this
yeah.
season.
This season.
Sorry, this season.
The lob,
Yeah.
which won goal of the month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the FA Cup final goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matic will win goal of the month probably for that, I'd imagine, as well.
Also interesting as well was a couple of the goals. Those goals you spoke about were at the end of the halves, weren't they? Defoe's was right at the end of the first half.
Yeah.
The FA Cup goal right at the end last night. Right at the end
Yeah.
comes back to fitness and energy levels.
It does. K-Tronic
Okay.
Hello.
says, amidst the gloom to the loss of Man U, can we agree that the 2 goals Palace scored were 2 of the most exhilarating strikes for our sides in recent memory? They were good goals.
Actually, yeah. For some reason,
Wait, the Townsend one.
Oh, it took a deflection.
did it take a deflection?
It would have been a lovely goal if it had
But it
gone
was
in
still
the
a
clean.
nice strike, though, wasn't
Right,
it? Come
okay.
on.
Yeah,
We're
and-
looking for positives here, guys.
Well, no, it's a good. I mean, the build-up was really good,
Yeah.
and Benteke worked really. I mean, that's the annoying thing is that's what you want to see from Benteke. If he's not scoring goals, we've talked about this every single week. If he's not scoring goals, then do that, and then you wouldn't complain. You go fine, bring other people in, and that was really really good.
Yeah, that's exactly what you
And
want.
whether Sirlot being up there with him gave him the space and time to do that, I don't know. But the second goal was really well worked. I mean, it was real,
There's something special about seeing a player bear down on goal, isn't there? That like
Yeah.
it's reminiscent of Dougie Freedman doing it, of Andy Johnson doing it, where they're clear on goal and you just know that there's that anticipation of that moment. And then I thought Van Aanholt's finish was class. Really.
Against
it was
De Gea
really
as
good.
well.
Gave him the eyes.
Yeah, but the thing with the Townsend goal as well, because that is exactly the Arsenal situation, and it's a similar sort of goal curled into the, it's cutting across it without the deflection. So that's where you think, okay, we know this is going to be it. This is the Arsenal game for this season. So.
I at half time I saw Sam Jordan, who does the Palace social, and I said the exact same thing to him. This feels like the Arsenal game for him. And it was a Monday night as well.
Yeah.
How wrong we were. Welcome back to the 5-Year Plan Podcast. Pod 248, sponsored by Vector Printing. For your print and embroidery needs, go to vector.co.uk, and that's Vector with a
Okay.
And JCIS, the global research and brand consultancy from South London. Visit jc-is.com.
I will.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm miles away. I was hypnotised by Rob's watch.
Yeah, so
Just as you were talking about printing and embroidery, there's some sort of space age thing on his wrist.
Yeah, it does stuff.
Cool. Does it tell the time?
It tells the time. It
I said it
shows
like
me
my-
messages that I get on my phone.
Sounded
which
like
is
my
right
dad
here.
there. Does it tell the time?
Palace's next game is Chelsea away. Chelsea, weirdly, we've become their bogey team in recent
Say that
years.
now, James.
I said it before the last
You
game. I
jinxed
think.
it.
I said it last
We
pod.
won our last 2 games there.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. Beat them we beat them 2 out of 3 times at Palace as well.
Yeah.
Last 2.
Yeah. The John
beat
Terry
them
own
this
goal.
year.
We always seem to have it. It used to be Liverpool, didn't it?
Yeah.
We were a team that we always seem to sort of get results against. It now seems to be Chelsea. You were talking earlier about obviously Conte's under pressure. They got the Champions League. So maybe it's a kind of a touchy word. It's a kind of a good time.
One of the annoying things about losing the points against Tottenham and Man United is that they would have been proper bonus. Of the 4 teams that were playing in the top 5, Chelsea was always the one that I imagined we would get something out of. Mm-hmm. So the thought that we let those points slip away against Tottenham and Man United is frustrating. Liverpool, I think, will probably have too much for us at Selhurst Park, but I'm sort of quietly optimistic about it. I think I had visions after, and I do think Gary Neville and Jamie Redknapp went a bit over the top about Chelsea killing football by the way they approached the Man City game. And again, it's good that people are still giving us credit. And Gary Neville mentioned us. Mm-hmm. He talked about there are ways to play Man City, and there's Palace found a way to do it, and Burnley found a way to do it, and Chelsea haven't. But my big fear after that game was that they sacked Conte and got Frank Lampard in as an interim manager, and everyone was full of energy again. But I just think they will have the Champions League game on their minds. Of course they will. They don't look like... Conte's not going to be manager next season, full stop.
League title's gone.
Mm-hmm. Conte doesn't look like he's got any real interest in winning games anymore. So I do think it's famous last words, but I think we've got a chance of going there. And
our only issue being that when we beat Chelsea earlier this season, Wolf came back. When we beat them at Stamford Bridge, we had Wolf playing and Benteke. Each time we played them, we had a strong team. And again, Jesse, our big issue at the moment is injury. So even with our record against Chelsea and any potential failings they might have, we're not going to go there with a particularly strong lineup.
Yeah, I'm worried about Giroud, to be honest, because he's got a knack of causing damage.
Mm-hmm. But you don't know the way Conte is. You can't predict who he's going to start with anyway.
He dropped Giroud and Morata at the weekend.
They have a striker problem, don't they?
Giroud's fit. Giroud's eligible for Champions League game. You don't know who's going to start. And it's like they just don't look like a team that... I mean, they look so frustrated. They look like they wanted to play football on
Czech's there to be shot at, isn't he?
Czech
more than
plays for Arsenal.
Sorry, don't know what I was thinking.
Courtois.
Yeah. But I mean, their back forwards at them or whatever it is, the system. Rudiger's doesn't look fantastic.
They look a bit like a team just not quite sure what they're doing. Just a bit.
They're slightly better quality version of Arsenal.
They're shipping goals more than
side.
They're conceding a lot of goals. I think they've lost as many games this season as the year as we have.
They're basically a team like Arsenal in terms of that kind of lack of spine, lack of kind of leadership, lack of direction, really.
Well, the first teamers aren't
but at a high
doing
level.
it. Kante's had a quiet season by his standards. Lewis has been dropped.
Yeah.
Hazard's not being as powerful as he has been. Morata's got some sort of issue.
Yeah, Willian's been good though.
I mean, they've still got Fabregas and Hazard and Willian. They've still got players that are good enough to win the game. But I think that again, I'm fairly certain if had Man United been playing a Champions League game on Thursday or Friday, we probably would have won last night. And I think the only thing Chelsea got is the Champions League, and it's not beyond the realms of fantasy that they can get something out in Barcelona, and I think that'll be on there. Yeah. Just in terms of how they're going for tackles. I mean, none of them will want to miss the Barcelona game. Yeah. And I just think if we go there with a positive frame of mind, which we tend to do for away games, and I think we can score against them. They're letting goals in.
So how do we approach this one then?
I think Bissaka's got to retain his place. He deserves
it. So.
It's also got to be said, like the last 2 games, as disappointing as the end of those games have been, we haven't actually been... Like Spurs were easily the better side, but we've not been shown up in terms of scoreline. Yeah. It's not like we've been thrashed. After that Man City defeat up at City, you were thinking, if this is going to be the norm against teams of that level, we're really, really going to struggle. But in each game, we've turned up and we've competed, and you end up with, like the Man U match, they had coaches at the end of the game congratulating Palace players as they came off because they knew they'd had a tough match. If we can go into games against going to the game against Chelsea with that attitude, I think it gives us a chance, doesn't it? It's not like you can't write Palace off. That's the key thing.
Yeah,
despite these last 2 last-minute defeats, you can't write a team off because of those.
It's not a game that's impossible to it's not a game where you say I can't see Palace getting anything out of it. I think the difficulty is psychologically, because you could see they're all on the floor last night. They're going to take a bit of lifting.
Yeah.
But hopefully, like we've sort of done, we start the pod furious and frustrated, and you end it. There are
it's
some
bigger
highlights.
picture as well, doesn't it? Because we've looked at the run and you've written down the teams and stuff everyone's got. The bigger picture is still, we're well in this and we've got a very good chance of getting results and staying up.
Yeah, but I suppose Hodgson would say the even bigger picture is that it's a miracle that we're well in this, considering where we were after 7 games, basically. Yeah. And if you'd said to us after those 7 games, oh, by the way, you'll only be 3 points off 12, you'd say, oh, fair enough.
And we knew this was 4 games that were going to be trouble. So Everton, Spurs, United and Chelsea. We knew this was the tricky patch. We've known this was coming.
And also, as a mate of mine said last night, it might be one of those rare occasions when it does work out for us, because we've played difficult games with players missing.
Yeah.
And that we've only liked players we back for the team, for the games that we think we can,
important ones.
That we can win.
Yeah.
And to be fair, as he said last night, he's far more optimistic than I am. We haven't. I was slightly annoyed at the Tottenham games. I thought we could have taken the game to them a little bit more than we did. But last night we played like a Premier League team playing another Premier League team, and we haven't looked out of our depth even with those. To be fair, no matter how angry I've been and how annoyed I've been about the injuries, we still actually acquitted ourselves rather well, albeit we haven't got any points, which is important. But I
think the only time under Roy we haven't looked like a Premier League team playing Premier League team is that 20 minutes at Arsenal. When we look like a Sunday League team or an FA Cup third round team.
Both times against Arsenal when
I guess we
got it wrong
in the build up to the pre-season, when everyone was making their tips. Everyone knew the title was going to Manchester. They just didn't know which one. And then if you think about that, we're disappointed not to have taken 6 points off them at Selhurst.
Fair point.
Should have beaten City.
Fair point.
Should have won last night, really.
And I think as well, you could argue, if you compare that to the away games, when we conceded 4 and 5, the improvement between now and then,
massively,
is
Okay, and just to point out, Henrik Young,
hi Henrik,
hello, sent us a question asking how we'll do at Chelsea, but says we can attack. We show we can attack against Man U, and some players returning to defence, Fossey, Mensah, Ward, maybe we might have half a chance. So there's another person that feels positive about it.
I think again, because no one will be that surprised if we don't win, this will be perfect. It's like, and then after we'll get this game out of the way, and then apart from Liverpool, we've got 8 games left. 7 of them are against teams in and around us. That
it would be nice, wouldn't it? And it would have been nice to have that little boost, that little extra.
If we can get any points we can get from Chelsea, Liverpool will be great, and I think we can. We get a win and a draw, we come out with 4 points against those 4 teams, and everyone's going, that's great if we got 4 points against those teams.
Exactly. And then maybe the mood around online and everywhere changes.
There is. I mean, I can understand why. I mean, after everyone, it did suddenly go very flat. But I think that's because we just thought after the winning at Leicester, winning at Southampton, it did look like we'd pulled it off. Basically,
this division is such a scummy, difficult division to kind of compete in. Like that, and that's what we're learning.
This year,
you can't take anything for granted.
I mean, West Brom are going down, whatever happens, but it's just, I can't remember a season. I'm going back to 1962. But I can't remember a season when, because even last year, there were times when I thought we're going down. Even then, you thought this, Sunderland and Hull, they're definitely going down. But I think as well, we're forgetting it was the penultimate game of last season before we were safe.
And there are
despite that run,
it was Hull. We lost to Burnley, and suddenly we were right back in it again.
There are a lot of clubs who feel the same way as we do. You ask a Southampton fan, they'll say the same thing.
West Ham, all
Stoke
the West Ham
fans, they all say the same thing. They're all a little bit scared that they're going to be the ones that are going to lose that lottery.
All the West Ham fans I know are convinced they're going down. Absolutely convinced they're going down, and their run of fixtures is a tricky one.
Who have they got?
They've got some difficult away games, but they've got teams.
I've heard it's bad. Street said it was bad.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, there's still a third quarter of the season left, so they've got. I mean, everybody's got at least 3 of the top 6 in their last 6 games. I mean, Brighton's last 4 games of the top 4. So they're not out of it.
They're not, but they have given themselves a good chance. But we won't talk about.
But then we can hopefully ramble at Murray Street standards.
Anyway, let's end the pod there. Kevin, thanks for being in your house. Jesse, thanks for being on.
Always a pleasure.
Rob, thanks for
My pleasure.
being you.
No, it's not your pleasure. It's just, how can you say that? You're not even right about it being your pleasure.
What a ridiculous thing to say.
I've enjoyed arguing with Kevin. It's been fun.
You haven't.
So we'll be back with you after the Chelsea game.
When does the international? There's a break. We got Chelsea, then Huddersfield, and then there's a break, isn't it? Is that right?
Yes, because Huddersfield's on the 17th.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, send us in your questions. Send us in your healthy Palace-style smoothies. You can tweet us at FYP Fanzine, or you can email us. This is a brand new thing we're trying. contact@fypfanzine.uk. So, that's it. Thanks for listening. See you again soon. Bye.
He goes.